Okay, so I've just been talking about the employment visa for foreign nationals under the General Employment Policy. But what do you do if you've got a Chinese national who's resident on the mainland? Can he apply under the General Employment Policy too? Well, the bottom line is that he can't apply under the General Employment Policy, because if you're a Chinese national and you want to apply for an employment visa in Hong Kong, you do it in one of two ways. You either apply under the Admission of Mainland Talents and Professionals Scheme, which I'm going to talk about, or if the Chinese national has been resident outside of China for a minimum of 12 months immediately before you submit the application, or he's a permanent resident of another country immediately before you submit the application, then Chinese nationals that fall into those two silos, if you will, can apply under the General Employment Policy. The difference between Chinese nationals and other foreign nationals in that situation, though, is as a foreign national you can be in Hong Kong and you can make your application to adjust your status from visitor to employment. But if you're a Chinese national that's an overseas Chinese that's got PR, has lived away from China for a minimum of 12 months, they can use the General Employment Policy, but they can't be in Hong Kong at the time that you make the application. They have to be outside of Hong Kong. Everybody else, in terms of employment at least, needs to be considered in the Admission of Mainland Talents and Professionals Scheme. And the objective of the scheme is to enhance Hong Kong's status as an Asian world city. Actually, for those people who go back a few years, there used to be two programs, and I forget what they're called now, but one was the Admission of Mainland Talents and the other was the Admission of Mainland Professionals. And I could never really clearly see the difference between the two, except for one of them seemed to be primarily existing to enhance Hong Kong's culinary experience, whereas the other one seemed to exist to allow really talented individuals to come in and take up employment here. Nevertheless, a dozen years or so ago, they merged the two together and they embodied it in this program called the Admission of Mainland Talents and Professionals Scheme. Now, the interesting thing about this scheme is that, given that I've been practicing this stuff since 1993 and I went through the handover with it and what have you, it used to be that the British had all the privileges in Hong Kong, and you can't say that the Chinese have all the privileges in Hong Kong anymore, but if you look at the numbers, there's consistently always about 17,000 employment visas issued in the General Employment Policy to foreign nationals, but these days it's about 25,000 Admission of Mainland Talents and Professional Scheme approvals. So the balance is absolutely shifted, as you'd expect, from Britain to China. But as everything when it comes to China, the Immigration Department are always applying the floodgates mechanism, because there are literally 1 billion people north of the boundary that would love to be here. And so the test for admission as a PRC national resident on the mainland, in my experience, is significantly higher than if you are being admitted under the General Employment Policy. And that tends to mean that the calibre of individuals that present themselves from China under this program is always sort of that much higher. But anyway, so it is to attract qualified mainland talents who's professionals and professionals who possess skills and knowledge not readily available, which is the General Employment Policy test. And they have to contribute with a view to moving forward our economic development, arts, culture, sports, and the culinary profession. As I said, this was the merger of the two prior programs. But effectively what they're saying here is, bring us the brightest and the best, and if we think that it stacks up, we'll admit them. And they're admitting to the 225,000 at the moment. What does this all mean? Special skills, knowledge and experience of value to and not readily available in Hong Kong. This is all the same stuff fundamentally as under the General Employment Policy. It's the Immigration Department that will determine effectively what passes muster, but usually there's something special about these people. And in my experience, they're usually at the master's and above level, or they are really talented engineers, or they've really got something unique and important about them, mathematicians and professors and all this kind of good stuff. Or they are award-winning chefs and they're famous for having contributed elsewhere in their scope of endeavour. So, as part and parcel of the approvability test, there's got to be no security objection and also no no known record of serious crime. What I find absolutely fascinating about immigration in Hong Kong compared to other jurisdictions, notably Australia, which I've got some experience in personally, is that actually the immigration department don't ask you if you have a criminal record, except on the Quality Migrant Admission Scheme. So you effectively can have a criminal record and not be in a position where you have to disclose it. And I don't know why that is. Obviously, it seems to work for Hong Kong. There's something going on possibly in the security vetting at the back end. But you'd expect at least that the immigration department would ask the question. I suspect that if they asked the question, they'd have to deal with the ramifications of the answer. And if they have to deal with the ramifications of the answer, it might mean that they would perhaps deny somebody when ordinarily they should be approved. But because there's been an admission to a previous criminal record, that might mean that they need to go and investigate what that's all about, and it could just mean further administration for them. So it's a bit of a trust issue, I think, on the part of the department, and all credit to them for having taken this stand. As I say, there'll be some policy issue behind it, but I don't know what it is because it's all wrapped up in security. So good education, first degree in a relevant discipline, or great experience. As I say, most of the applicants that we see are master's degree holders. Absolutely needs to be a genuine job vacancy, which a local person can't be expected to fill. And the job offer that's extended to them has to be suitable for them in terms of their background, in terms of their obvious capabilities. And the business has to be a validly registered local entity. And the amount of compensation has to be at least equal to that which would be offered normally locally. That I've just described is very similar to the general employment policy from the perspective it's an employer-employee type relationship in play. But what about if you are a mainlander that owns a business and you want to establish a new Hong Kong operation and relocate yourself to Hong Kong as part and parcel of that exercise? Now, let's face it, there are millions of businesses north of the boundary of all varieties of shapes and sizes. And in my experience, you know, everybody south of Shanghai wants to live in Hong Kong, right? So what do the immigration department make of business owners that are seeking to use the fact of their business in China as a means to come into Hong Kong? Bear in mind, we're always dealing with the floodgates mechanism. So there is a way to do it. It's quite convoluted, but this is what the immigration department expect to see. The mainland owner comes as a business visitor, he establishes his company, and then he leaves Hong Kong. And while he's away, he makes an application on the Admission of Mainland Talents and Professionals Scheme. And then the immigration department consider the application, and they think that in the circumstances, the approvability test is passed, then the visa will be issued to them. So you have to come as a visitor, and your business visit brings this executive to Hong Kong. And whilst he's here, he does all of that stuff that I've just mentioned, establishes the company, and then he goes back to China. And then he applies for a short permission to come under the Admission of Mainland Talents and Professionals Scheme. And again, this is now to put the next level of the next layer on what he's doing. And really the immigration department are expecting now, okay, well, you've done the provisional stuff, you've established your company and you've opened the bank account, you've laid the groundwork. Now come and open the office and recruit your local staff and put in place all the operational criteria that you need. Make it all work, implement your business plan. And then once you've implemented it, you then make an application to extend the Admission of Mainland Talents and Professional Visa, predicated on the new facts on the ground that have been created. And then at that point, you can expect that the Immigration Department will convert that temporary short Admission of Mainland Talents and Professionals limited stay into a longer 12-month limited stay, and then put you on the on the 1 year, 2 to 3 year pattern. And that's sort of the broad brush of how you can use this scheme if you're a mainland business owner. Of course, the reality is that most mainland business owners just haven't got the mindset to think in this way. They just think that you should be able to plop some money down and you're going to get the visa, right? That's how it works. So this is from my perspective, this is mainly a theoretical construct. I've done it once, but in all of the years that I've seen, every time I've made a presentation as this being an option, there's a kind of like look into a blank stare on their blank glaze on their face, staring into there. They go, why would I do all of that? That's altogether too hard, isn't it? But anyway, this program can be used for mainland business executives as well. Yeah.
Is this a specific policy, or is it just pragmatically we can do that?
Well, the policy is the Mainland Talents and Professionals Scheme, the umbrella way that it's considered. But the Immigration Department do set this out as being the way that mainland business executives are able to get themselves into Hong Kong. But in practice, it's all too difficult or too hard for them to consider. Normally, mainland business executives, what they do is they have 10 million Hong Kong dollars, they go to Gambia and they buy a permanent residency in Gambia, Vanuatu, and then Immigration Department close their eyes to the fact that these are just purchased permanent residents and they want this $10 million in Hong Kong, so they'll admit, the creme de la creme, as it were. So most mainland business executives conceptually can use this, but in the main, I mean, I've done it once in 12 years or whatever it is since the program's been in play.
Sorry, what's the difference between this short AMTP? Because you use the same form, but simply just state that you want a shorter period, 6 months.
Yeah. You set out your plan. You set out what you're going to do, and you say, in this time frame, if you give me the permission to be in Hong Kong to do it, I will do this, I'll do that, I'll do the other. And so it's a step-by-step process, right? Because most mainlanders aren't trustworthy, so you're not going to give them a full 12 months from the get-go, because anything could happen. So you say, all right, we're going to keep you on a short leash. So come as a visitor first. You get 7 days.
Get the basic stuff done, and then apply for short SMPP. That means 3 months or 6 months for you to recruit people.
Yeah. Okay. Implement that on the ground, and then when all that's implemented now,
so submit another application before the first short one expires.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And then that full one is 12 months.
Yeah.
So this AMTP is in fact always the first time is 1 year, and then 2 year.
Yes, it's 1, 2, 2, 3. As long as there's no change of employer at the time that you make your application to extend.
Okay. So why do you say it's difficult? Say, for example, if a lot of Chinese mainland business, they don't want to set aside, say, 10 million for the CIS, say, for example, and they would like to try this route, because there's no limit on, or no requirement actually on how much money you need to put in, right? As long as you can prove to the Hong Kong government that you have a kind of business plan, that you will employ certain people, rent an office space. They don't care whether you invest 2 million or 4 million, right?
Well, they do.
They do? There's a care.
Because this is just a cheap man's capital investment entrance scheme, right? So if you're going to use this policy, they want to see that you're not just talking.
So are there a minimum amount of money injection that the immigration are looking?
No, but what they do is they look at the whole story, right? So they look at the mainland enterprise and they say, right, what's going on there? But of course the problem is 9 times out of 10 the mainland enterprise has been cooking the books. So what's actually going on in the mainland isn't revealed in the paperwork. But anyway, the immigration department will look at the mainland enterprise and they'll say, okay, what's this all about? And what's Hong Kong all about? Where does it fit in? So let's marry the two together. How is Hong Kong going to be advantaged? What's the rationale for it? And now let's see what you've done to create these new facts on the ground through making your investments in Hong Kong. And then if we're satisfied that you can make a substantial contribution to the economy of Hong Kong, we'll allow you to remain here and live here to run this business accordingly.
So are there a benchmark saying how much contribution you need to? That's what I'm saying.
How long is a piece of string? You need to employ,
say for example, you need to employ 10 people, 2 people, 3 people?
How long is a piece of string? No, just depends. Because if you're employing 5,000 people in China and you come into Hong Kong and you want to employ 1 or 2 people, immigration department will say, well, hang on, you're the owner and you're moving yourself to Hong Kong from a 5,000 person enterprise to a 1 or a 2 person enterprise. How does that work? doesn't really make sense.
So
to
do
me.
you mean
I'm
this is a
second-guessing
very
your motivation.
difficult route for mainlanders to have? Very difficult.
It's only difficult because mainlanders in the main don't appreciate the sophistication behind the model. What they think is, all right, should I put 10 million Hong Kong dollars in, or can I do it cheaper? That's the way that they tend to think. But if you've got a mainland business owner that's genuinely going places and needs to be in Hong Kong to genuinely do his next thing, you can use this to get him residence under under this visa category.
But the risk here is you come in, set up the company, go back to mainland China, apply it, and then don't get accepted because it doesn't look sufficiently credible.
Yeah. Essentially, so it's a story, right? So you get it right, you get the story right from the outset, and if it's clear that something positive and tangible is going to result, and there's a really good reason for it, rather than just some Chinese business owner contriving whatever he thinks he can contrive in order to get status here. So the immigration department see through the rubbish, right? They know what's rubbish, and if you put rubbish forward, you'll get refused. But if it's genuine and there's a really good scenario going on, absolutely. As I say, I've done it once. But every time I've presented it previously, oh no, I don't want to do that. Now, drilling down to the next level of detail. Hong Kong enterprises. This can be used by companies in Hong Kong that have factories or offices in the mainland, or mainland enterprises with branch offices in Hong Kong, or multinational enterprises with branch offices in Hong Kong and the mainland. So this is the kind of framework that the Immigration Department will sort of look to when they're considering the sophistication of all of this. And the mainland business, the intercompany transferee needs to be clearly providing supervisory duties because he's managerial or he's professional in nature, and the expected skill set's got to be high. They're expecting to see proof that there has been 12-month prior employment on the mainland prior to this transfer into Hong Kong, where there's a mainland intercompany transferee situation. And the compensation that this mainland intercompany transfer is going to get has got to be broadly commensurate with market rates, so no cheap employments. And the mainland intercompany transferee numbers must be reasonable compared to the overall workforce that's located in Hong Kong. Okay. So, bits and pieces to sort of tidy it all up. Absolutely no chance of changing your status to an Admission of Mainland Talents and Professionals Scheme visa while you're in Hong Kong. And once you've got the visa under the Admission of Mainland Talents and Professionals Scheme, you can change employers, but it's the same process as it is under the General Employment Policy, so you have to effectively go through the process of satisfying the approvability test. If you get an Admission of Mainland Talents and Professional Scheme visa, you can bring in your dependents, and interestingly, your dependents are also, if they're adults, they're allowed to work. And the extension process, assuming that there's no change in employer, is a 2-3 year pattern. So 1 year in the first instance, then 2 years, then 2 years, then 3 years. Okay. Great. Any other questions about Mainland Talents? All right. Once again, I've elaborated on this ad nauseum on the Hong Kong Visa Handbook. So by all means, go there and listen to all the other good stuff that I have to say about it. You got a question?
Yeah, so it's actually not a kind of immediate objection saying that if this is a new company set up by yourself, and then this new company apply for ATMP for you,
Yeah.
they will immediately object to it. No, it's not.
No.
If you can prove your case.
Exactly. Substantial contribution to the economy of Hong
Okay.
Kong.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.